found out in his very extensive research that we have a distant relationship to Jesse and Frank James. I remember telling that to your mother.
Okay,
On by phone one time. We moved in here, been here for maybe a year, and somehow I said I had just found that out, and
Yeah.
related to Jesse James. She said, "Well, I'm not so sure we should be proud."
well,
of
yes.
that.
So, on that note, we've already started our interview here. It looks like,
Okay.
and we're, I guess, we're talking about today. A.G. Walker. He is one of our relatives. How is Mr. Walker related to
That's
us?
the first
Question, yeah. Yeah.
Because he was the brother of our great-great-grandfather, Hiram Walker.
Right.
A.G. Walker would then be our great-great-uncle.
Yeah.
And the two brothers came to Texas in 1845 or somewhere, but it was like I looked it up once. It was 1 month before Texas.
I noticed that
joined
too.
the Union.
So that makes us eligible to be
We
sons
could, if
of
we
the,
wanted to,
of the
join
Texas
the
Republic.
Sons of
The
the
Texas
Republic.
Republic, yeah.
They walked, if not the entire way, at least 250 miles. I haven't been. I've gotten unclear, contradictory information about that. But they were basically coming from Kentucky,
Right.
and they were herding on foot a herd of about 150 oxen.
Oxen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first town, it was a town at that time, it was not the big city it is now, was Dallas.
That was the
150 oxen
first
is not a
place they
small,
arrived.
small investment. Those oxen were a little more expensive, I would think, than other
Yeah,
animals.
I don't know the story behind that.
Yeah.
But they had a big herd of oxen. Now, they were coming from Kentucky,
Yeah.
and I've been able to trace the lineage back pretty far, way far. That's what I wanted to.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
That, yes, well, okay, I have to ask, how far back did you go? What did you find way back?
By the information that I got from, again, a very distant relative who was from the AG line,
Sure.
that would have been his great-grandfather, who lives, if he's still alive, I don't know, because we haven't been in contact for quite a few years now. But
Right.
shortly after moving to Fort Worth, we did get in contact. And I got a lot of information from him, and it was from him that I learned that we're related to Jesse and Frank James.
Yes, yes.
And that goes all the way back to Wales.
To Wales.
Our common ancestor with Frank and Jesse James
Yes.
was the guy that came over, whatever his name was, from Wales.
Wow.
And that goes back to the late 1700s.
Yeah. So not after far, we could maybe be sons of the American Revolution.
Well, that's actually we do have ancestors who fought in the American Revolution.
We'll put him in Texas and see what happened. What started happening in Texas?
They arrived in Dallas.
Yeah.
The two brothers, Hiram, whom we are descended from,
Right.
and our great-great-uncle,
Yeah.
A.G. Albert Gallatin
Sure.
Walker. Now, we don't know why he was named after Albert Gallatin, who has a huge Wikipedia entry, but who was a figure in the American Revolution. But the two brothers arrived in Texas, having made the journey mostly by foot, at least 250 miles. And I got that confused. I said 250 oxen. I meant to say that they walked at least 250 miles, and I don't know how many oxen that they had. So
Okay.
that's where I got confused. So they had.
But that's
oxen.
almost like carrying money in your back pocket, because I think
Yeah.
oxen would sell real well.
Evidently, that did. Now,
Yeah.
now A.G. Walker, there's a lot more known about him
Yeah.
than about our great-great-grandfather. He was much more flamboyant. There was a rumor
that he had gotten in some trouble, got a girl in trouble back in Kentucky, and that's not actually what happened.
Right.
And in fact, that there was an attempt made to use that rumor against him in his election for the Texas Congress.
Yeah.
And he was able to defuse the rumor by writing to Kentucky and getting the paperwork that showed that he had sued for divorce. He had been married to that woman.
Yeah.
It was very uncommon in those days for that to be a
For my
divorce.
divorce, that's an uncommon thing.
And he had one daughter,
Hmm.
as I understand it, by that woman, just the one child with and I think it was a daughter. We don't know anything about
If
that.
somebody's interested in him fighting for Birdville or against
Yeah,
Birdville changing
and
and
that
having
relates to
actually,
how he became a senator.
and actually
Beca-
having to shoot
because,
somebody
yeah.
in his office.
Well-
Maybe it was a Birdville reporter's office. I mean, wasn't he? He owned a paper or
Here's the
something.
story. He did own a newspaper,
Yeah.
the Birdville Union,
Okay.
and at the top of the on the masthead of every edition of the Birdville Union,
Yeah.
he declared his support of Sam Houston.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Who would,
So I knew he supported Sam Houston, and because of that, he was a little reluctant to secede from the Union because he valued the Union.
Well, yes,
Like Sam Houston did.
he was against secession.
Yeah.
Now, got to kind of back up here a little bit because your first question was about the
Yeah, that's right. I'm jumping
the,
ahead.
the Birdville-Fort Worth dispute. Birdville was the original county seat of Tarrant County,
Hmm.
and it had a higher population. But the money was being placed by people like John Peter Smith and what have you. Now names, but we don't know that they were actually real historical people who were the founders
Right.
of Tarrant County. There were various persons who were buying property in what was then Fort Worth, a very small village
Yeah.
by comparison with Birdville,
Yeah.
and really called Fort Worth because it was originally a fort.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's what it was. And then there were just a few houses around it, camp followers and what have you. But people that started buying the property down here were wanting to create a town, eventually a city,
Sure.
Fort Worth. And so there was this fierce competition
Right. Right.
between the Birdvillians and those supporting Fort Worth.
Sure.
And at the same time, there was Union versus Confederate politics. There was a question
that
of whether or
overlaid
not
it.
they were going to secede.
Yeah, that was part of the picture too, probably.
That was part of it too. But so that would have made A.G. Walker, especially as a congressman down there in Austin, a political ally of Sam Houston.
Yeah.
And so he was a Union man. Our great uncle was A.G.
Yes.
was a Union man, and he was a Birdvillian,
Right.
which John Courtney, who was another newspaper publisher and editor there
Oh, I didn't
in
know that.
Birdville.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it was called the Birdville Democrat. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It made them bitter enemies on two counts. One, they were both on opposite sides regarding secession,
Yes.
but as well on opposite sides regarding secession.
And they were newspaper competitors, so
Yeah.
they were trading insults, and the journalism of that day was very personal.
Yeah.
And the insults got more and more bitter, between the secessionist, anti Birdville and the Union man
Sure.
are our great great uncle A.G., who was not only a Union man, he was for keeping the county seat right where it was in
Sure.
Burnville. And things became very bitter between them. And one day, John Courtney, who was the competitor of our great great uncle,
Sure.
walked into the office angry and was cursing our great great uncle and called him an anti-secessionist and this and that, and drew his gun and started firing. And A.G. jumped down behind his desk, got out his gun,
Yeah.
and fired back and killed Mr. Courtney.
And so it sounds like everybody was convinced that was self-defense.
It was it did go to trial,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
and it was self-defense,
Yeah.
and so he was let off.
Can you imagine having a newspaper office now with a gun in your desk?
Yeah,
Or any office with a gun in your
or
desk,
just in your pocket.
in your pocket.
And that's how most men carried
Yeah.
in those days,
Yeah.
in their pockets, not in the holsters that we see in,
Yeah, yeah.
in Western films. Usually it was in their pockets.
Holsters came a little later.
Yeah, yeah.
This was the late 1840s.
Wow.
Well, but Mr. Courtney went away, but the controversy did not,
Right.
and the money was what was on Fort Worth, and evidently there was a lot of money to be lost if the county seat were not transferred.
That's what I suspected and reading about it too.
Yeah.
You always want to follow the money. It sounded
Yeah.
like there was a money situation.
So
Walker, went to Austin as a congressman,
Right.
and his main reason was to fight this attempt to move the courthouse for Tarrant County, and he almost succeeded. He came very close, but the Fort Worth powers managed to stop him.
Hmm.
But he believed in representing the people that elected him, and they were, for secession.
Yeah.
He was not, but he voted for it, even though he was a Union man.
Yeah.
Well, that, for a brief period of time, ended his political career because he was a Union man, and this was the Civil War.
Yeah, sure.
But after the Civil War, he was part of the Reconstruction government.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah.
yeah, and he was on the what did they call it? The county commissioners. Yeah,
My impression on you,
Yeah.
Reconstruction government, that was military
yeah,
administered, so
Mhm.
he probably reported back to some Union
Mhm.
military officer of some sort.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great story, a short piece that was published in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram in the 30s by our grandfather,
Oh,
our great-grandfather,
okay.
who mentions his uncle in passing.
Yeah.
He doesn't go into a lot of detail, but he's the son of A.G.'s brother Hiram,
Okay.
and he wrote about a trip that he made with his father and brother from I think that Deer Creek was near what's now present-day Crowley, so it was northern Tarrant County.
Okay.
Northern Johnson County, where,
Oh,
where
okay.
they lived. And they made a trip to Fort Worth
Yeah.
to sell something or other. And along the way, at that time, those were the days of the Chisholm Trail and the cattle drives.
Sure.
And a cowboy came riding past and told them that a herd of cattle were stampeding and to get out of the way.
Oh my.
And their father, our great it gets confusing. Our
Yeah.
great grandfather
Right.
got the wagon between two trees, tied it to both ends of the wagon, tied one to one tree, one to the other,
Yeah.
and they got behind the wagon. And when the stampede came, the herd went around them. You know, it went around the wagon, therefore went around them,
Yeah.
and they avoided being trampled.
Which would have happened, yeah.
And then they got to Fort Worth, and I believe that they lived, or rather they stayed for a few nights
Yeah.
in the office of A.G. Walker. And they witnessed a hanging,
Oh my.
a public hanging while they were here.
You know, this is like normal. Not well. It sounds like extraordinary events for them too.
Mhm.
But our travels stories are: I had a flat tire, and it messed up my whole trip. And that's our drama, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
Their drama is I almost got killed by cattle.
Yeah.
Which is a witness of public execution. And by the way, the Indians were out last night and just stole 3 of our horses.
Yeah. Life or death stuff.
So that was their story, and it was our great grandfather, Jeff Davis Walker, who interestingly was named Jefferson Davis Walker. So evidently there might have been a difference of opinion about the Civil War between the two brothers, Hiram and A.G.